all day.
Okay. It's the 17th of February, all day, according to the Mayor Pro Tem. So this is a special meeting to try to finish up this year's budget. So before we get started, I guess we'll start with some comments. And Councilman Fleming had to go out of town. He had an emergency, so that's why he's not with us this morning. Mayor Pro Tem, do you have any comments?
Not now.
Okay. The only comments that I have I would like to just reiterate. 5 years ago, 6 years ago, whatever, I ran for city council, and I was delusional, to say the least, and I had all these big dreams, and I wanted to do things for the kids in the community. I wanted to help create community, and I wanted to, I was against raising taxes. I still feel the same way. I'm all for the kids. I'm still about creating community, and I'm against raising taxes. But sometimes you have to do things that you're not comfortable with, and I'm prepared to do something that I'm not comfortable with today. Tim, Scott?
I guess the only thing I want to say is whatever the outcome is of what we do today, I don't want to lose sight of the fact that the reason we're still wrestling with this budget is because we have a request for additional personnel, and all of them in public safety. And I don't want to lose sight of that when we make a decision today. And I am committed to finding a way to fund all of those positions. And I believe if they weren't needed, they wouldn't have been asked for. And there is one time when I would say that it is imperative that we stretch our beliefs and our conservative beliefs or liberal beliefs or whatever kind you have to get the mission accomplished. We've got a serious crime issue, and we have a serious issue with the emergency medical services that we provide, and that we're rapidly running out of manpower to get those jobs accomplished. And if the ultimate decision is today to start that hiring process, start funding that process, I think we need to take it all the way, and we need to spend the rest of this year finding a way to get that done, so that next year when we sit down at this table, we're not having the same arguments, and we're not making unhealthy financial decisions to get that accomplished.
Councilwoman?
Yeah, I think it's important that, you know, like Tim said, they have asked for more personnel for a reason. I mean, I know that in those kinds of fields of work, when you're working those long hours and day in and day out, it creates a burnout, and that's where you lose personnel and you lose that knowledge. So I just think it's important that what we do reflects the fact that they've asked for those 6 police officers, 6 firefighters. You know, that's important. It's important that we take care of the town. And if that's what they need to complete their jobs, then I think that's what we need to focus on.
I just want to say one other thing before we go any further. This is something else that I think people need to take into consideration. This is something that I had to take in consideration as well. We're going into another budget, and I had somebody say, well, you just go ahead and make the cuts and you have to worry about it till next year. But we're already having a problem on the police department. We can't keep officers. We just can't keep them. They keep going to different jobs, and it takes a while to get them on board. And I don't think that really sends a good message to the new hires saying, well, we're going to hire 2 officers, but we don't got you locked in. We've got enough to get you for the year, but we can't promise you, but the council promised us. You know, that's not a good sell. I think this reassures the police department as well as the fire department, who also need help, that they can reach out to people and say, hey, we've got this position locked in. The city's behind it, the council's behind it, and we want you to come and work for us and stay with us for a long time. So I think that definitely that we need to send a message with that. And with saying that, did you have anything else you wanted to add? Well, saying that, I'm proposing a tax increase. Jim, did you want to just present what the tax increase was, the information on that?
Oh, so what Bob had presented last time, which I think is where you're trying to go based off of, Eric has here, Stephanie actually got this put together. This would be what the tax increase would be. If you look at this sheet, for a $100,000 assessed taxable value, this is hard to do this. The rollback changes from 17 to 18. So just with the rollback change and the tax rate staying even, there was going to be a annual increase of about, do you have that one, Eric? Just because of the change in the rollback, there was going to be an annual increase in what a $100,000 home would pay for property taxes, from the $886 to the $907. So about almost a $21 increase in property taxes on a $100,000 assessed home. This would effectively, to have a 2.5% increase, would effectively double that change in property taxes on that typical $100,000 assessed property. So it's about a $20 impact to a house that was assessed at $100,000 for what you're considering today.
Is there anything else involved in that? We're just going to raise taxes? Does the previous discussions
I think that
avoid everything, or what?
I think that you would still have the $20,000 impact to economic development to make that happen. You know, we talked a little bit about revenues. Eric was looking at maybe $5,000 in that neighborhood of net increased fees that could come in from the nuisance as an offset to that position. And we also talked about a change in the rental permit annual fee that would rate effectively, you're looking at about a $10,000 annual impact there. That doesn't quite cover the $330,000, but it is within, it's within about $15,000 of covering it by that. Now we can still apply, as we were talking about, some of the equipment changes. In fact, one of the equipment changes, the vehicle for PD with the heart monitors and things like the other equipment that we saw changed in the CIP, that can be an offset for that, and that's one piece of equipment for another. So I think that you can very easily justify and say you have a balanced budget with that move, and equivalent to where we started out at the beginning of this process. Does that get it for you?
There's no other cuts for any other departments?
You don't need to have that to do that if you're doing the 2.5% increase to property taxes.
And this gets us,
That does not necessarily mean that as you get 3-4 years out, specifically as you start looking at the idea, if from a policing perspective, even with the changes here that we're talking about, just adding those positions, you get near the end of the grant for the 2 positions in the police department, to maintain those positions, you're going to have a discussion about what are you doing for either cuts to other services or consideration of an increase in property taxes, likely again. But that's 3 years out, 2 to 3 years out from here. You may come back next year, as we've talked about this plan for having, I mean, you've budgeted for 1 position on the fire, 2 in the police. You get to next year, between now and then, if the SAFER grant were to be funded, I mean, we're okay for that next year, even with the SAFER grant, the way the funding source works. But that can potentially have an impact on what that discussion is in the future. If you determine you want to take the next step with that police hiring strategy, next fiscal year, you may have to you're going to have this discussion come up again. What are the trade-offs from one area to the next?
For me, council, and as I said, I'm going to support filling those positions, and my thoughts are that if we don't get the SAFER grant, the fire chief says he can, that all he needs is 3 firefighters. The police chief says he needs the 6 plus the funding for the 2 officers that were hired through the COPS grant, and then the nuisance person. I would like to have on every work session from now until we get a funding source identified, that it be on every work session and that it be a part of every work session discussion, or that the rest of the council say they're not interested in accomplishing what the chiefs have asked for.
I've got no problem with that.
I don't either, but I think maybe starting in April, we could start that. I don't know that we.
After we
We're
get the
just
budget
getting
finalized and
through this.
everything, yeah, that's fine too.
So bottom line is we're getting the 2 police officers, a firefighter,
And the nuisance.
and the
the
nuisance
nuisance.
for 40 cents.
Are we good?
That was not my original intention, but since my plan didn't fly, I'm okay with this.
So, Annie?
Yeah. I mean, I'm still obviously concerned about maintaining the police staffing at the end of the grant. And I look at the, most recent sheet that we were given, and I just think that it should be something we should follow. Because it covers everything, including the COPS grant, the police officers there.
Yeah.
You good with us moving forward though, where we're at for right now?
I guess. I mean, we'll just have to deal with it later.
I'll deal with it with you, I promise.
Okay.
Jim, anything else?
No, this is, as we, the staff goes through trying to get budget forms ready. They'd gotten all our state budget forms were set for how the discussion had been through Monday. So they'll have to make some quick adjustments to try to get things ready to be submitted to the paper on Tuesday, which today. So given that, we're going to make some changes that will incorporate the tax increase. There's going to be some of the revenues or transfers within our stuff that will not necessarily, they're going to be a mixture of what we had before for some of the capital items. We're going to make sure that we have all the capital items to expense in there. It's just where the source of funding is. We don't have time to make all the changes in how those transfers are done. But when we get to next year, for example, the golf course funding that will come out of hotel motel tax, as we had originally discussed. The funding for the parking lot over by the PD building will come out of local option sales tax, as we discussed originally. So some of those things, we may not show the source the way that we will ultimately fund it. So we'll just have to deal with it when we get to those things in the next budget year. Timing is everything for getting this stuff done last minute.
Council, I want to thank you for working hard on this.
I do too. And I know it seems to always go down to the last minute, and rightly so. These are tough decisions, and I don't think they should be made lightly. And I know it's tougher on the staff when it's like this, but again, that's why we've got really good staff. You guys are awesome, so appreciate that. But This is all for the better of Burlington. Again, I just want to say this before we close out, that Burlington is more than just cut numbers. You know, I know people are going to say, well, we're looking at these numbers, but it's, you know, and you can make cuts here, but you start to tear away at the fiber, the fabric that really makes a community a community. You start tearing away at other things, and you're saying that you want to hire more policemen. You take away pools and things like that. We won't be able to make enough money to buy policemen in this town. So I think we've got a nice fair mix this year, and Burlington still is a great place to live, work, and play. Anything else before we close out?
I too want to thank the staff and Jim. Thank you. Thanks, folks.
Okay, I'm sure we'll be hearing from some of you. Thank you.